Hi everyone, Chris Natsky here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week on Facebook Live. Today what I want to talk about is practices. And are you practicing your basics? You know, being a career martial artist, the basics have always been an integral part of my training. In fact, we often say to our martial arts students is that a black belt is nothing more than the master of the basics. And I can remember being in one of my first martial art classes and having my instructor at the time talk about the importance of basics. And he kind of put it like this. He said, you know, the basics are your foundation for all the other techniques. And if you build your house on sand, which is poor basics, at the first sign of poor weather, it's not going to hold up. But if you have a strong foundation, you have really strong basics, then, you know, when the weather comes, you'll be able to almost take on anything. So this whole idea of basics, not only in martial arts, but in our life, is one of the most important things we can do. Hey Lisa, good to have you with me. So, you know, one of the things I wanted to talk about was this whole idea of basics and its importance. And I was recently exposed to a book called Raise Your Game by a guy named Alan Steen Jr. And he actually trains a bunch of elite athletes, and what he was remarking on is he was talking about a story when he was watching Kobe Bryant, when Kobe was at the top of his game, and he asked Kobe if he could watch Kobe go through one of his workouts, and what he was blown away by is his intense detail, his intense focus on the basics. In fact, in the 45-minute workout that he watched, all he did were basics. Basic footwork, basic shooting skills, basic dribbling skills. And afterwards he asked him and he said, you know, how is it that the best player in the world just does a workout with the basics? And Kobe smiled at him and he said, well, how do you think I got to be the best player in the world? He said the best player in the world doesn't get bored with doing the basics. He's never bored with the basics. So it got me thinking, what are the types of basic activities and the basic practices that we can each do in our own lives to make sure that we're able to be at our very best? Because the more we practice the basics, the more we achieve mastery. And it's like Bruce Lee said. He said, I don't fear the man who has done 10,000 kicks one time. I fear the man who's done one kick 10,000 times. So what are those basics? Well, I've identified 5 areas, and I tell you what, I'm identifying these. Hey, Becky, good to have you with us. I'm identifying these not only because I know that they would benefit you, but I'm constantly working on them as well. So here you go. Here are the 5 basic practices as I've identified them. The first one is rest. Oh yes, started with rest. And the reason I did this is the one that's the most difficult for me. I think that so many of us in our worlds, we think that we have to just constantly keep going in order to be successful, in order to reach our goals. And I know that's how I've been for much of my life, feeling that if I just let my gas off, or my foot off the gas, that I was going to get behind. And what I've realized in my life is the reason I was practicing that, it was really out of fear of, you know, being behind. And you know, we do this, it's our honor badge in our life, right? I mean, you talk to anyone, they talk about how busy they are, or they brag about how little sleep they get. But the fact of the matter is when we're at our best, is when we're allowing ourselves to rest and recover. Several years ago, I was testing for my 6th degree black belt. So this was actually back in the early 2000s. And I was really feeling fatigued. So I went to my good friend and homeopath, the late Gil Greiner, and he did some tests on me, and then he asked me about my workout routine. And then he stopped and he looked at me and he said, holy cow, Chris, you are getting ready for a major injury. You have to really dial it back. And I resisted. I resisted so much. You know, I had my instructors coming in and I had to be at the top of my game. And finally what he did is he looked at me intently and he said, Chris, you have to remember that rest is part of your training. Rest is part of your training. So my question for you is, where can you incorporate rest as part of your regular practice? Number next is the idea of nutrition. Ooh, that's always a tough one to talk about. Nutrition, what do we put into our bodies? I know when I had my martial arts school and I would do fitness and nutrition training, this was probably the most sensitive area that anyone would ever talk about. I mean, it was like talking about their sex lives. There was there was a guardedness about nutrition, and people were guilty about what was going on with their nutrition. But what I found is it was probably the most important element in terms of them releasing weight. In fact, recently I was having a discussion with a fitness expert friend of mine, and we both came to the conclusion that even though we love physical activity and we teach it for much of our training, that the most important aspect of someone releasing weight was what they were putting in their bodies. So, how are you doing in your nutrition plan? Are you putting in lean proteins and lots of vegetables? Are you getting plenty of water? Are you putting in healthy fats and carbohydrates? Are you avoiding processed foods? I mean, there's plenty of books and programs out there that can tell you much more about nutrition than I can. But what's that basic practice that you're doing on a daily basis to make sure that you're nurturing your body the best way you can? Next is movement or exercise. So number 3 is movement. Do you have a basic practice, a daily practice of moving your body? Now, let me say here, I didn't say exercise, I said move. Because I think that sometimes when we say exercise, people have a tendency to pull back, but really our bodies were designed to move. And I know that might sound like blasphemy from a martial arts expert, but really when you look at it, it's movement, consistent movement over time is what really leads to long-term health. In fact, there are areas in the world called blue zones, and these are places where people live routinely into their 90s and even in their 100s. And what they found, the common denominators were these people had really healthy diets. Number 2, they had a purpose for living so that they were still contributing their communities. But most importantly, what was happening is that they had movement happening in their lives. They were gardening, they were walking, they were doing whatever it is. So the important part about movement, my friends, is to find something you love doing and find something that you're going to consistently do on a daily basis. Is it walking? Is it yoga? Is it stretching? Is it martial arts? I don't know what it is for you, but find something you do and get out there and move. Number 4 is, in addition to movement, is this idea of mental growth and constantly challenging ourselves on a daily basis. You may have heard before that leaders are readers, and I really believe in that in myself. I think that for us to constantly be trying to improve ourselves from a mental standpoint and learn and grow, that is the key to success and happiness. In fact, I know in my own life and also with the people that I coach and I train, when we're growing, when we're learning, even when it's difficult, that's when we're at our happiest. And so what are you currently doing to constantly grow and expand? What books are you reading? What courses are you taking? What podcasts are you listening to? See, the fact of the matter is when we continuously grow and stretch ourselves, that most important muscle in our body, our brain, it continues to grow and expand as well, much into our later years. But when we start to sit back and not utilize it, that muscle will atrophy as well. So what can you do to continue to grow and practice things daily so you can grow mentally? And then finally, what are your basic practices for your spiritual growth and expansion? This probably more importantly, in my opinion, than the other 4. This is what brings it all together. So what I mean by that is taking time to really get in touch with something larger than yourself. Having a daily practice to be quiet, to meditate, to take walks, to read sacred scriptures, whatever that is for you. In fact, it might even be doing the dishes, because anything that we do where we have a constant focus and just one mindedness on is really meditation. You see, what I found is when I have that practice in my life, all the other things happen and they unfold gracefully. Whether you call it God, the universe, nature, spirit, whatever that is for you, where are you taking some time to connect? And here's what I'm going to challenge and encourage you to do in terms of this basic practice, is schedule it. Schedule it in your calendar. Make sure that it's one of the most important things that you do. For me, I do it first thing in the morning. That way I know that whatever happens for the rest of the day, that I'm going to have that practice completed, because it not only helps me develop my spiritual growth and expansion inside myself and something larger than me, but it also helps me with my connection with my most important relationships in my life. So there you have it. There are the 5 basic practices. So just to repeat, first, what is your rest? Are you getting adequate rest? Are you sleeping well? Are you resting and letting your body recover? What kind of nutrition plan do you have? What are the basic practices in terms of nutrition? Are you moving consistently in your life? Do you have an exercise routine or movement routine that you practice daily? Do you have daily practices for your growth and expansion to expand your mind? And then finally, do you have a daily spiritual practice so that you connect with something bigger than you? So, hey, I'll tell you what, you might listen to all 5 of these things and you might think they're a little overwhelming. I just say pick one and practice that, then add the next, then add the next. And producing what you might find is you might become a black belt in life yourself. So, hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me. I'm Chris Natzke with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. I'm so honored when you take the time to watch these videos, as well as share them and like them, and also comment. And if there are things that you liked about what I said, I want to hear it. If you've got a different point of view, or you think there are things that others could really grow and expand from, please share that as well. And it's just an honor to be able to share this with you, and we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.